Portland. Oregon emerged in the 1840s as a settlement at the confluence of the Willamette and Columbia rivers. The city's founders recognized the strategic value of this location: deep water access for maritime trade, abundant timber resources in the surrounding forests, and fertile land for agriculture. Geography shaped the city's earliest identity as a lumber and shipping hub, and these practical necessities would leave their mark on Portland's architectural character for generations to come. The city's first structures reflected its frontier origins and economic purpose. Early commercial buildings were constructed primarily from locally harvested timber and stone, materials that were abundant and economical. By the 1870s and 1880s, as Portland's wealth grew from the timber trade and railroad expansion, the city began to invest in more substantial architecture. Brick and cast iron became dominant materials, particularly in the downtown core. The New Market Theater, completed in 1872, exemplified this era Romanesque Revival structure that announced Portland's ambitions as a growing Pacific Northwest metropolis. During this period, architects and builders drew inspiration from Eastern American and European precedents, adapting styles like Victorian Romanesque Revival and early classical elements to local conditions and materials. The turn of the 20th century brought further transformation. Portland's population grew steadily, and the city experienced an economic boom driven by continued timber exports and increased regional commerce. Between 1900 and 1920, downtown Portland saw the construction of larger, taller buildings made possible by advances in steel frame construction and the adoption of electric elevators. The architectural language shifted toward Beaux-Arts and early modern styles, reflecting both national design trends and local prosperity. The Central Library, designed in the Italian Renaissance Revival style and completed in 1917, represented the city's confidence in its cultural future alongside its commercial success. These decades also saw the emergence of distinct neighborhoods, each developing its own character based on the economic status of residents and proximity to employment centers. The interwar period and mid-century brought new planning considerations to Portland. As automobile ownership expanded and streetcar networks developed, the city's physical geography became more accessible. Neighborhoods that had been peripheral became viable residential areas. Single-family homes in the Craftsman and bungalow styles proliferated in areas like Laurelhurst and Irvington, reflecting both the aspirations of the expanding middle class and the influence of the arts and crafts movement. Meanwhile, downtown continued to evolve, with Art Deco and streamlined modern buildings, reflecting the optimism and technological faith of the 1920s and 1930s. The Pittock Mansion, perched on a hill overlooking the city, represented the residential aspirations of Portland's wealthiest citizens and showcased period design at its most elaborate. The post-World War II era introduced significant changes to Portland's urban fabric. Suburban development accelerated, and downtown experienced both renewal projects and periods of disinvestment. Urban renewal initiatives of the 1960s and 1970s resulted in the demolition of some historic structures and the construction of modernist office towers and parking structures. However, architectural historians note that Portland's growth remained more moderate than in many comparable West Coast cities, which preserved much of its 19th century building stock. The South Waterfront district, developed from industrial land in the late 20th and early 21st centuries, demonstrated a new approach to urban development, one that emphasized mixed-use spaces, pedestrian access, and ecological considerations. What distinguishes Portland's architectural evolution is the increasing emphasis on sustainability and livability. Beginning in the 1970s, the city pioneered urban growth boundaries, light rail transit systems, and green building standards that would influence architectural practice and urban planning decisions. These policies reflected broader shifts in how cities approach density, transportation, and environmental responsibility. Buildings designed in recent decades show the influence of these priorities' emphasis on energy efficiency, use of renewable and recycled materials, integration of green spaces, and design that prioritizes walkability and public transit access. The Pearl District, once an industrial area, underwent transformation into a mixed-use neighborhood where historic warehouse conversions sit alongside new construction designed to complement rather than compete with the existing built environment. Today, Portland's architecture tells the story of a city that has valued both its historical inheritance and its responsibility to future generations. The preserved Victorian and Romanesque structures of Old Town stand alongside contemporary buildings. Designed with ecological restraint, the city's neighborhoods each carry the marks of their particular era and economic circumstance, from the modest worker housing of East Portland to the grand residences of the West Hills. The ongoing presence of the natural landscape. Mount Hood, visible from many vantage points. The rivers that define the city's location. The surrounding forest continues to inform how Portland's architects and planners conceive of urban space. The architectural history of Portland reflects not a single unified vision, but rather the accumulated decisions of many generations responding to changing economic conditions, technological possibilities, and evolving understandings of how cities can be built responsibly. In this way, Portland's past remains embedded in its present streetscapes, shaping how the city continues to grow and change.